For years, this is what we thought of Detroit Lions football. In 2008, the Lions became just the fourth NFL team to ever go winless during the regular season. But their insane rise from pain to prosperity really has us wondering, how did they really become contenders? I'm Jerry, and this is a Clutch original on how the Lions saved their franchise. Now, before we jump to modern day, we have to look at an eerie history that marked the Lions for decades. Some believe a curse is what brought Detroit their worst years. The curse of Bobby Lane. The Hall of Famer not only helped the Lions to 3 titles, he left them with something to think about too. Because in 1958, as a defending champ, Detroit traded him to the Steelers. His response? This team will not win for another 50 years. And exactly 50 years later, something insane happened. But let's jump to 2007. One season before their infamous year, the 2007 Lions were actually contenders. They started the season 6-2, then travesty hit for a long time. Because not only did Detroit finish that season 7-9, they continued this trend for years. Through the next 2.5 seasons, Detroit would go 3-37, and a big part of that was 2008. Oddly enough, Detroit went undefeated in the 2008 preseason, providing hope to an improving Lions team. But a mix of problems, including 2008 draft picks getting suspended, led to the 0-16 season, getting eliminated from the playoffs with over a month left in the season. This being 50 years exactly after Lane was traded. And it's really more of a tragedy, because there was one major bright spot. Despite the horrendous season, Calvin Johnson still tied Larry Fitzgerald for the most receiving touchdowns in 2008, and he was still top 5 in receiving yards. Detroit also ironically had Dan Campbell as a blocking tight end in 2008, who had originally signed with the team in 2006. So, it was time to rebuild. Matthew Stafford and Ndamukong Suh brought hope, as Stafford was taken with the first overall pick in 2009, and Suh as the number 2 pick a year later. The Lions made the playoffs for the first time since the turn of the century in 2011, and started turning it around even more with the arrival of Jim Caldwell in 2014. Equipped with the second best defense in the NFL, the Lions went back to the postseason for the first time in 4 seasons. But things just started falling apart. Just one season later, the great Megatron shockingly retired. And then Jim Caldwell shockingly fired following the 2017 season, who was a Detroit favorite. He left the franchise with the best team record since Buddy Parker, and it was about to get a whole lot worse. Enter the Matt Patricia era, the former New England defensive coordinator. He's often been called the worst coach in Lions history, as a coach who lost complete respect in the locker room. What was a 9-7 team with Caldwell went to 6-10, then 3-12-1. But changes were being whispered. Former Lions owner Martha Firestone Ford's departure not only led to her daughter Sheila Ford Hamp taking the reins, it also sparked a Detroit renaissance. November 28, 2020, both Matt Patricia and GM Bob Quinn were fired, marking a huge shift in Detroit. Offensive coordinator Darrell Bevell took over as an interim head coach, finishing 2020 with a 5-11 record. Detroit's culture was shifting. They added new GM Brad Holmes, hired Dan Campbell as head coach, but March 18, 2021 changed everything. Matthew Stafford was traded to the Rams.
Breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ, and it is monster news.
For Jared Goff and 2 future first-round picks. What started as an 11-game winless streak to start the season actually showed flashes of respectable play. Going into week 16 of Detroit's 11 losses, 5 of them have been by a score of 8 points or less, and many were heartbreaking. Detroit lost 3 games to walk-off field goals, including the longest field goal in NFL history, Justin Tucker's 66-yarder in week 3. Also after week 5 against Minnesota, they became the first team ever to lose 2 games via walk-off field goals of over 50 yards. Adding Greg Joseph's 54-yard kick in Minnesota's win. And Detroit had 6 losses in 2021 with leads going into the 4th quarter. They were showing signs of where this team was heading, including Amon-Ra St. Brown breaking Detroit's rookie record for most first-year receptions. The Lions added 7 new players in the 2022 NFL Draft, including Aiden Hutchinson with the 2nd overall pick. But the 2022 season started horribly. However, Detroit won 8 of their last 10 games in 2022. Starting to put their team together. with 7 more picks in the 2023 draft. Their 34th overall pick was a player set for their future, Sam Laporta. Looking back, the value of the Matthew Stafford trade was starting to pay dividends, and it was starting to show on the field. Not only did the Lions start the season by beating the Chiefs, they sealed their first division title in 29 years that Christmas Eve. This led to a Hollywood storyline for their first home playoff game in the same amount of time, a reunion with the legendary Matthew Stafford. And not only did Detroit seal their first playoff win since '91, they continued this momentum, beating the Buccaneers, making it all the way to the NFC title game before falling to the 49ers. The new era of Detroit Lions football had officially arrived. From an 0-16 travesty to one of the best teams in the NFL, the Lions have really had a full circle moment, with Dan Campbell playing on their infamous 08 team and now coaching that same franchise to playoff success. There's a new energy in this team that was formerly just an easy win on the schedule for opponents. Time will only tell how far the Detroit Lions can go from here.